Welcome to the fourth part of our HTML, CSS, and JavaScript series. This is going to be the last part in the series. This is the part where we're going to add JavaScript to our web page, where we're going to make it dynamic so that these buttons here can have functionality. Okay, so first, there is something small that I want to change in my document. As you can see, all these photos of Nelson Mandela that are in the photos folder, I want them to all have a similar extension. This one has an extension of the .jpg, .jpg, this one, but this one has .jpeg. They're all .jpeg, but this one has an E. So we need to make them uniform. So I'll just rename it, and the extension, just remove the E. Okay, that will make my life easy in the next part where I'll be using these photos in the JavaScript. All right. So now, for us to add JavaScript to our HTML page, we need to link a JavaScript file to it, and for that we use a script tag called script. Okay, so now let's come here and add a file. Let's call it index.js. So JS is the extension for JavaScript, and now we need to link this file to HTML document, and for that we shall use a source attribute and link it. Okay, just let me remove this file here and move it up into the. Okay, I want to move it at a higher level. Let me delete it for the moment. Yes. All right. So let's come to this folder, the topmost folder, and add it there. Index.js. So I'd mistakenly added it to the photos folder. So now I want to link it. It's here at top level. Okay, index.js. All right. So now we've linked our JavaScript file to our HTML document. Good. So now let's go to the JavaScript. So most of this lecture is really going to be introductory. JavaScript is a very broad programming language, but I'm just going to highlight just a few things that we shall use to add functionality to our page, which are good enough for the start. So I'll talk about a couple of things. I'll talk about a variable, variables. So a variable is a container of information. Then I'll talk about functions. I'll just comment here. I'll talk about functions. A function is a set of instructions that we use to execute a given task or to calculate a given value from what has been given. I'll also talk about conditionals. And in this case, conditionals, you are really talking about if statements, whereby we can perform a given task only when that condition is met. So the function can only execute that task if that condition is met. I will also talk about objects. And an object is a data type in JavaScript which contains key value pairs. The keys are sometimes called properties. So a property is a name that holds information about a given value. Okay, so I'm going to apply all these things in the JavaScript that I'm going to use to make this page dynamic. Let's start by creating a function that is going to change the background from the current background, which is beige, to yellow. And let me call that function function change background to yellow. Okay. So a function can have any name. It is really arbitrary. You can call it anything. You can even just have function C, just one letter. It will do something. It's just something to describe what, but it's always better to have a descriptive name so that when someone else is looking through your code can have an idea of what your function is going to do. Okay, this is the notation. This is how we write a function. We have the function keyword, then the name that you give it, then we have these braces, the brackets, which take parameters. In this case, you're not giving any parameters. And then we have the curly braces, which is your function block. So when I click here, it shows me function, and then it shows a void. Void means it's returning nothing. Currently, there's no return statement in this function, so it is void. That's functionality that is inbuilt in VS Code that shows you that. So this is my function that is going to change the background color to yellow. All right, so before that, let me come here and get a hold of my background or my body, which has the background. And for that, I'm going to use a global variable. So a global variable is a variable that is at the top of your document that is going to be accessed in many functions. And let me call it const body doc. Or let me just call it document body. Really, the name, you can call it anything. Doc body. And I'm going to use document. So document is a property on the window object. The window object is the one, the overall object on the browser here. So I said document dot query selector. It has a method called query selector. And in that, I want to get hold of the entire body, right? The entire body, which is containing all this stuff. And my query selector is going to be body. Single D. All right, so now I have hold of the body. So now here, I want to get my document body. And I want now to change its background. And so I'll say dot style dot background color. Get it here, drop down. So for example, just moving back for illustration, now the document body here has very many properties, right? And when I put style, style is just one of its properties. And style is also an object that has different properties. And in this case, I want the property of background. Okay, background color. And I want to set it to yellow. Okay, so as simple as that. Now, if I come here, let me format the document. If I click here, all right, let me try to open the console, developer console, to debug a little bit and see why it's not changing. This is very common when you're coding. Just go here, more tools, developer web tools, and should open the console down here. Okay, yeah, I had forgotten something very, very critical. All right, it's normal when you're coding. So I've not yet linked my function to this button, okay? All right, so the button that I want to change the background to yellow is this one. And for us to link our function to the button, we need to use what they call an event handler. And in this case, I'll use an on-click event handler. Okay, an on-click event handler. And for that, let me now give it the name of my function here, right? I can just come here and copy it the way it is here. And then paste it over there. So with that, I've linked my function to my button. So now if I click document body is null. All right, another challenge a bit here. Let me put this in my function. Awesome. Did you see it? It changed to yellow. Yeah. So this part is interesting. You've had a chance to look at the developer tools for debugging. And for example, I can also, so there's another property on the window object called console, and it also has a property called log. Can I just say my background is now yellow. All right, so if I click here, it now shows me in the console, my background is now yellow. Okay, so this is how we can also use to debug if you want to see something in the console as we work. All right, so for the meantime, let me close the console. All right, now I want to introduce another concept, which is the conditional. Okay, now the conditional is I want to change the color to yellow after having a confirmation. Okay, and so now I'm going to use an if statement. So this is how you write an if statement. You write the word keyword if, then open braces, and then you have the code block. And for that, I'm going to use a window property called a window method. So a method is a function that is on the window object. It's a function that is on a particular object. For this case, I want to use a method that is on the window object, which is a method called confirm. And for that, I'm going to say, are you sure you want to change the background to yellow? And if I click yes, that's when the background should change to yellow. As you notice, every time I make a change in my function, my file is linked to the HTML document, and this HTML document, this web page is being accessed via this server that is listening at port 500.50. So every time I make a change, the server reruns, and so that's why it resets the original color. Okay, so it's a live server. Every change that I make, it gets reflected. All right, so now I want to only change the color after confirming. So if I click my button, it will open this, this dialog box. Are you sure you want to change the background to yellow? When I click OK, that will give my value of this method to true, and then that's when it should change. Okay, so before I click it, let me first add the word true here. So true is a data type called a boolean. It's a data type called a boolean, and it says something is true. It's a return. It's a return value sometimes it can be a property. It can be a return value to a given function or a given method. In this case, it's a return value to the confirm method. So if I click OK, right? If I click, you want to change the background color to yellow, and I click OK, it will return this method. The confirm method will return a value of true. And when it is equal to true, that's when I'll be able to change the background color. And so if I click OK, it turns true, and then I can now change the background color. So that is the function for changing the background color to yellow. So now let me create a function for changing it to orange. So that when I click this button, I can now change it to orange. Okay. Now let me just rename. I've just copied that, and I'm just going to rename it. To save time, otherwise I could have retyped all this stuff, but I just copied this function and pasted it here. So change background to orange. Let me just change the words here really. You want to change it to orange. And then here, set background to orange. My background is now orange. Really, this is to show in the console. All right. So now let me link my function to the button. And similarly, I'll just come here, copy this to save time, put it to the second button, and then let me rename my function here to orange. All right, so now my function is linked. The function is now linked to the button, and so if I click change background to orange, it will bring me this dialog box. Are you sure you want to change the background to orange? I click OK, and then it gives me orange as the background. Okay, if I maximize, then let me minimize again. All right, we got it. Now I want now to add functionality to the start button, which is the reset background. So let me come here. Shift Alt 4. I'm formatting the document. Let me say function reset background. Let me call it BG. And for this, I want to get hold of this, my document. And then I want to get this. Let me copy that too. And then I want to reset it to original color. This original color is beige. Okay. if I open our styles.css and I go to the body, we can see that we set originally the background color to beige. So I want to reset it to this original color. Okay, and let me close that. So let me start by changing the background color to orange. Click here, it turns to orange. All right. So, okay, let me link this to my document too. For that, copy this here, paste it here. Now let me rename my function here to reset bg. Okay, reset bg. So now change the background to orange. If I click reset background, it turns it back to beige. Change to yellow. Okay. I reset background, it turns to orange. Okay. So if I say change background to yellow and I click cancel, if I click cancel here, this method will return false. And if it returns false, then we shall not move into this code block. So if I click cancel, nothing will change. So that's where the if statement comes in. We can only perform the task in this code block when the if statement returns true. All right. So far we've looked at a variable. A variable in this case is const. Is document body. Const is a keyword for naming a variable. Const, and my variable is called doc body, and then I'm giving it a value, which is the document.query selector, which is the body. All right, we've looked at functions. This is a function. We've looked at the way it is written and what it does, and we've also looked at the conditional if statement. We've also talked about the object, okay, as a data type. In this case, we are dealing with the window object, which has different properties, such as document. And once you get the document is also an object that has other properties, such as style. The style is a document that has a property of background color, and then you can set it to a given value, which in this case is yellow. So that is what we've been dealing with. Now, in the next part, I want to introduce another data type called arrays. So an array is a collection of data that is arranged sequentially. So in this case, I now want to add functionality to these buttons. I want to show more photos of Nelson Mandela. Okay. So function show more photos. We call it that. For that function, I want to start by creating an array that will have all these photos. Okay. So let me say const photos array. Let me call it that is equal to. So an array is written by enclosing your elements in square brackets. And for this case, I just want to, for me to access these photos, I'm going to give elements of this array or items of this array as the paths to where these photos are stored, which is in the photos folder here. Okay. So I'll go one step, then I'll go to the photos folder. Photos folder, and then access my item, which is the photo, right? So one step up into the photos folder and then access the photo. So the photo is called Nelson Mandela. The first photo is Nelson Mandela 1, right? So to make my life easy, let me make this appear like this, and then I'll just be copying each element. So you separate elements with commas in an array, right? So we have, I'm copying and pasting. I think we have 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. We have 5 photos of Nelson Mandela, and each is just defined by different numbers. 3 equals 4. And then this is going to be 5. So now that we have the array, let's manipulate it to add more functionality to our function. So an array is a special data type. It's a special object that also has methods. And for that, we're going to look at the for each method. So the for each method of an array takes in an argument of a function, right? Takes in an argument of a function. And this function also in turn takes in an argument of the array item, right? Array item. But in this case, let's call it the photo, right? Let's call it photo, right? You can call it anything, honestly. Yeah. All right. So this function takes in a photo. So for each photo, so it iterates over every element in the array, and it's going to iterate over every photo. So for each photo, I want to do something, right, with it. So let's first create an element, const image, an image element. I shall use document dot create element. That's a method in the document, and we shall call it image. So what that does is that it creates an image element. If we move back here to HTML, an image element is this, right? In this case, this one is containing this photo here. Okay, so we want to create an image element. Okay, so after creating an image element, we want to give it a source, right? And for that source, we are going to point it out to photo, which is here. So already we are pointing our image element to each photo in the array. In this case, if we're dealing with this photo, we are pointing it to this photo. And it's going to do the same to all photos, right? It's going to iterate to each item, every photo, and it will pass in the photo path to each source attribute of the image. All right. So now that we have our photo, for us to see it, we need to give it styling, okay? So now we're going to say image.style. That's an attribute or a property on the image. And let's give it a height of 200 pixels. Let's also give it a width, image.style dot width of the same, 200 pixels, right? All right, so we now have our image. What else can we give it? I think that should be fine. Okay, so now I think that style is sufficient. Styling is sufficient. Now we need to append now the image to the DOM, right? We now need to append our image to this paragraph. Okay. And the way we shall do that, we need to first get hold of this paragraph. I'm going to say const, let me call it photos paragraph, just using that. I'm going to say document dot get element by ID. And what ID did we give it? If we look back, we gave it an ID of more photos. You can just really copy here and come here and paste it here. And then put it in quotation marks. No, is it a quotation mark? Yes, quotation mark. English is not my first language. All right, so we have the photos para. Okay, so now we want to append our image to this paragraph, right? And what we shall do is say photos para dot, it has a method called append child, and for that we shall append our image element that we created. All right, okay, so now let's try out this function. If I come here, all right, one more thing. Now before we do that, let's get this function and link it to our HTML document. And I'll come here on this button, on click event, I want to show more photos. Let me confirm if spelling is all fine. Yes, show more photos, show more photos. All right, everything's good. So if I click here, I should see photos. It is not showing images. It's not clear. Why? show more photos. Okay, come to the developer console a bit here. More tools, developer console. Click one more time. What's it saying? Photos not found. Okay, let me look at my path. Let me look at my path. If I say Nelson Mandela. All right. Thanks. Let's see. So we need to add the extension. Okay, we need to add an extension to each image. Well, let me just actually. So without adding an extension, it really does not know what you're trying to show. As you could see, we could see the image elements, but we couldn't see the images. All right, so one thing you'll know about coding is not a straightforward thing. You have to code. Sometimes you have to code as you debug. All right, and with that, I think it should be fine. If I click here, yes, awesome. It shows. We get the images. But the first one is not showing. First one is not showing. Nelson Mandela 1. Why isn't it showing? Okay. So I need to rename it. He says, see, Nelson Mandela. So coding, you have to be very careful. A small typo makes your stuff fail to work. Okay. All right, so we have all our images, but as you can see, they're all squished. Let's add some spacing to them. And for that, I can come to my styles file. That was photos para. Where was that? More photos. Yes. Let me give it a margin left. Margin left of maybe 2 pixels. All right. That's it. Okay. If we come here, more photos. Margin left of 2 pixels. What if I make it 5? Okay, let me maximize. Oh yes. All right, so the reason why I want seeing any spacing is because the window was partially minimized, and so with that there is a property in these browsers which makes content fit on the window responsive to the size of the window. So that's why we couldn't see. We can actually remove this property, and let's see if we shall still have the spacing. I think there should be spacing already. Yeah, so yeah, as you can see, we already have spacing even without putting the left margin. So it was really because of the minimized screen that we could see them squished. So in fact, we can okay, let's leave it at that. But if we decided to make this window bigger, for example, if I move this here to make it a little bigger, as you can see, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and they look better. Yeah, so they're responsive to the size of the screen. Yeah. Okay. All right, so let's get back into our JavaScript. All right, so now the last part is I want to hide these photos. Now that we can see his photos, other photos, I want to hide it. I want to add functionality to this button. And I'm going to call this function hide photos. So function hide photos, we want to hide the photos. All right, just a minute here. see, it disappeared because we changed the name here. Data. All right. I now want to hide the photos after showing them. And what I'll do is I'll get hold of this paragraph where I'm appending my photos, right? Which is this that we had assigned in the previous function. I'll copy it and paste it there. And so to hide the elements in this paragraph, we shall use still the styles object. So I'll say .style .display, and then I'll set it to none. Okay. So what that does is, if the elements in this paragraph and I say display null, it hides that paragraph. It hides that paragraph from the web page. Okay. So let's try it one more time. Show more photos. We can now see all the photos of Nelson Mandela. If I say hide photos, they do not hide. Okay. Why? Let's go to the developer console. Settings. No, sorry. Developer console. More tools. Web tools. Let's say, okay, hide. What does it say in the console? It does not give me any error. Oh. Okay, let me see. If I move to the inspector, I go to my script element, the body, and I move down to the article body. All right, so I'll go back to my console. Show photos, hide photos. All right, let me look at it one more time. Okay, yeah. I feel bad that sometimes I forget very basic things, and it's very common. Okay, it happens in coding. No big excuse. I had not linked my function to the HTML document. Look at the time I've wasted trying to debug. All right, so now I'll come here, paste it there, and then I'll call my function hide photos. Hide photos. All right. Show photos, hide photos. They get hidden. Show photos, it's now not showing. Okay. Now it's another interesting part that I want to show you. Okay. When I say hide photos, it sets the display of this paragraph to none. So you can't see anything anymore. So I now have to come back in my function here of show more photos. Now I need to first put a conditional, right? And for that, let me move this to top level. Let me, okay, cut and paste it here to top level of this function, because I need to use it in a conditional. So in the conditional, I'm going to say if photos borrow dot child element count, right? We want to see how many children does it have. Is greater than 1. If it is greater than 1, if that is true, let's say photos borrow dot style dot display. Let's give it a value of x. Okay. Then else. Now let's move all this code into the else statement. Okay. Shift Alt F4. All right. So now let's check it. Show more photos, it will show. Hide photos, it will hide. Show more photos, it will show. Okay. So what this does is, in this if statement, it's going to first check, does this paragraph have elements, child elements, right? So the child elements, if I move back here for demonstration purposes, you see now like this article, its child elements are this this ulist, and this unordered list ul. So the child elements are the elements within an HTML, embedded within an HTML element. So the top level HTML element is called the parent element, and then the ones inside it are called the children element. So in this case, we want to first see if we have already images that have been inserted into this paragraph, the photos para. And if they've been inserted, definitely there are more than one because we are adding 5 images. If that is true, then we want to set the display to flex. So this flex here is counteracting the display none that we set here in the hide photos. Okay. And so after doing that, after showing the photos, we may not even need to run again. We don't have to. We don't have to run the else statement because once it is greater than 1, it will stop. It only goes into the else statement if it is less than 1. Okay, like if it is 0, if there is no element. But once the very first time we run it, we shall add elements to the paragraph, and the subsequent times we just be checking if there are already elements. And if they are there, all that we do, we shall just be setting the display element to flex. We shall just be setting the display element to flex, and that is it. Yeah. So in summary, we've added functionality to our web page. We've been able to add how to change the background to different colors, to reset it to original color. And then we've also added functionality of showing more photos of Nelson Mandela, showing and then hiding. Okay, so this is just really a tip of I don't want to say, it's just the tip of the iceberg. Yes, that's the best word I can say. JavaScript is very broad, but this is just an introductory tutorial to JavaScript where I'm linking my JavaScript to HTML and CSS. So this marks the end of this series for the introduction to HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Please let me know what you thought about it. Let me know your comments. And then give me ideas of what you want me to teach you next. I'm thinking of dedicating a series to JavaScript so that we go deep from the basics to the advanced features of JavaScript. That's a video series that I'm going to plan and I'll be doing next. Otherwise, thanks for following through if you've been watching from the start up to the end, or if you joined along the way. I appreciate your time, and please remember to subscribe. Thank you.